This is True Voice Unfiltered, the podcast where raw truth meets real transformation. I'm your host, Daria Anne, ghostwriter, content strategist, and holistic health warrior. No, I'm not a doctor, nurse, nutritionist, or any kind of medical professional, and this show does not dispense medical advice. I'm just an informed patient sharing what I've learned on my own healing journey. I also interview accomplished authors, speakers, entrepreneurs, and functional medicine practitioners who are transforming lives. If you're ready to break free from the sick care system, reclaim your health, and transform your life, you're in the right place. Let's get unfiltered. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 43 of True Voice Unfiltered. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. This is going to be a solo episode. I love bringing on guests because I absolutely learn so much from every person I bring on this show, but I also realize that I do not talk enough about myself and my story. And the reason why I wrote my book, My Escape from the Sick Care System, A Guide to Overcoming PCOS, Hashimoto's, and Autoimmune Conditions with Functional Medicine. So that's what I wanted to do today. So hello everyone, my name is Daria Anne DiGiovanni. I am a ghostwriter, content strategist, and founder of True Voice Writing Services. It's a full service writing agency. I ghostwrite full-length books for professionals who want to use their book to attract their ideal clients by presenting themselves as an authority in their field and the wise guide their clients need to solve their problem. I also write SEO optimized blogs, webpage content, pretty much everything having to do with content, specifically for small business owners. And I absolutely love working with functional medicine practitioners, hormone clinics, nurse practitioners who have taken the functional medicine route, anybody who is identifying root causes in their patients and helping them get better. The whole reason I wrote my book, long story, but I've been very frustrated with conventional medicine. So let me back up. I do not hate doctors. I do, however, really dislike the system that they're forced to operate under. Now, I grew up as the youngest child. My parents, in a family of 5. My dad was a fabulous general and vascular surgeon. I was always fascinated by what he did as a little kid. I was always asking him questions. You know, back then there was no laparoscopic surgery, so my dad was actually literally cutting people open only when it was absolutely necessary. He always used to tell me that surgery is a last resort, that you never want to put the body through that kind of trauma unless it was absolutely necessary to save their life, such as in the case of, let's say, a ruptured appendix, right? Then you have no choice. You have to do surgery. My dad was also very conservative when it came to prescribing medications. You know, he wasn't a big believer in just writing out prescriptions. So with that, I think that was partially my influence because I knew I was always really proud of the fact that if we were in public somewhere and somebody got violently ill or there was an accident, my dad could help them. And that always made me very proud. And I always felt secure as a little kid too, like knowing we have a doctor in the house, you know, if somebody were to get sick. It just always made me feel so good. And my dad loved his patients. They loved him. He was one of the few, you know, he was in his own practice at the time, which is a very rare thing these days, unless these doctors get off of the insurance system, which many of them are doing, much to their credit. I know a lot of people out there don't like concierge medicine, but that shows that you don't have an understanding of what's really going on in this insurance-driven sick care system, and that's why I titled my book the way I did. So let me tell you a little bit about me. So yes, my dad was a conventional, you could say, doctor, right? But growing up, I was very frustrated. I did not get help for what I needed from conventional allopathic medicine. So my first, I guess I'm going to call it the first milestone in my great awakening here, my great health awakening, came at the age of 19 when I went to see a gynecologist because menstrual cycles had gotten very irregular. I started very young. I was like 11, almost 12, I think, at the time. Everything was fine until I was about 16, and then my periods just got very, very irregular. And so by the time I was 19, my mom was like, that's it, you have to go to a doctor. We have to find out what's going on. So of course I didn't want to go to her doctor, who was a man. So my dad recommended a colleague of his who was on staff at his same hospital. And she was a very lovely woman. I'm not going to use her name. I don't use her name in the book. I think I referred to her as Dr. K. It's a totally different letter, all that kind of thing, because my issue is not with her in particular. Although I will say that I do wish more doctors on this system would show like genuine curiosity and take the initiative to expand beyond what they were taught in medical school to try to help their patients. So at the age of 19, I go to see this doctor, and I'm thinking, I walk in there, I'm going to get an answer. I'm going to find out what's going on. She's going to tell me what to do to fix it, or give me something that's actually going to address the root cause, and then, it's going to take care of the problem, and everything's going to be great. That's not what happened, though. So we went through the whole exam. I mean, first we sat down and talked to her. My mom was there, and then I went through the exam with the doctor. And then afterwards, she handed me a prescription for Provera, which is a synthetic version of the hormone progesterone, which is a wonderful hormone. It does a lot of great things in its natural form, or a bioidentical form. What she gave me was not bioidentical. It was made in a lab, fully made in a lab, and was basically a synthetic hormone. And even at age 19, I did not like the word synthetic, and I didn't think that any of that belonged in my body, or anybody's body for that matter, right? Why would I want to put something synthetic in my body? And she said, her answer was, it's just what we do, right? So speaking for the medical profession back then, it's just what we do. I was not happy with that answer. I don't know about any of you out there if you've been getting answers like that from your doctor, but I didn't like that answer at all. And when I asked her about Provera, like, what's this going to do for me? She explained that it was going to create a false scenario. Those are her exact words, a false scenario in your body, and that's a direct quote too, trick your body into thinking it's having a period. And I looked at her and I said, well, what is the point of that? And once again, it's just what we do. That's what she said. And then she said to me, you're not the only one though. I have a lot of patients coming here with the same problem. And I guess that was supposed to make me feel better, but all that told me was there were many other young women like me who were frustrated and receiving this Band-Aid. So I think that I probably filled the first prescription and took it, but I was never happy with that answer. I was never comfortable taking something synthetic, so I just said, forget it. I think I took the first round and I was done. I didn't like what that was going to do to me. So fast forward many, many years, I kept going from gynecologist to gynecologist, getting the same answer. This time it was like, go on synthetic birth control. Not realizing at the time that it wasn't the doctor, it was the system. Because I was, of course, going to doctors who were on my insurance plan. Let's just think about that for one moment, too. I do not understand how we've normalized selecting your doctor just because they're on your insurance plan, why we've normalized putting middlemen in between a patient and their doctor, and why it's just accepted. So, because I think it's a pretty dumb way to choose a doctor, quite frankly. I mean, you wouldn't choose a mechanic for your car, right? Just randomly, right? I know if you're anything like me, you ask for referrals, you ask people you know if they know someone, and you go to the person who has a great reputation. Maybe they have great prices, or maybe they're a little bit pricey, but they get the job done, but you want to go to the best person. How do you know, right? Just because somebody's on your plan, insurance plan, doesn't mean that they're the best person. But the mistake I made all those years ago was staying on that system and not thinking, oh, you know what? I could maybe pay for somebody who's educated outside of the system, who has taken the time to expand their knowledge base, who can really help me. But it just didn't occur to me at that time. So then we move on. The year is 1999. I go into work one day. At the time, I was in marketing for a large national bank. I was working in the South Florida office. They were, like I said, it was a large national bank. They had just moved into Florida at the time. I was hired and I worked at the time there was an office in Lake Worth, and that's where I was working. And there were 4 of us in the office. I had a wonderful boss. Actually, I had great coworkers. I really loved working in that office. It was a lot of fun. I loved the job. And anyway, one day I show up for work, and I believe this was in the fall of 1999. And my boss's administrative assistant, she and I had a great relationship. We were always chatting. She was very conversational, very outgoing, really, really nice lady. And so she came in one day and she's carrying a styrofoam container from McDonald's. And she opened it up and there were eggs and bacon, I think, and sausage maybe in there. And it didn't really occur to me. I mean, I didn't care that she was coming with breakfast, but she volunteered this information that, oh yeah, I went to McDonald's and I got, I got my scrambled eggs and the sausage and bacon, but I didn't get any hash browns and I didn't get a biscuit or anything like that because I'm doing Atkins. And I had no idea what she was talking about. And I said, what's Atkins? And then she started telling me about Dr. Atkins and the Atkins diet, that it was low carb, that you didn't eat bread, you cut out carbs, and that she had a heart test coming up and she wanted to get the best result from her heart test. So she was going to do Atkins for a month to prepare for it. And in my mind, I thought, well, if this is such a great way of eating, then why aren't you eating that way all the time? Like, why are you just doing it in anticipation of this heart test that you're going to have? But I didn't say anything, but I was curious. And I was also skeptical because, like many other people, I had been indoctrinated into the low-fat philosophy, right? The low-fat programming that fat is the enemy. Absolutely must stay away from fat. right? But eat these Snackwell's cookies that have all kinds of chemicals and sugar in them, right? And I don't know if anybody remembers that from the 80s, Snackwell's. What were some of the other things? I mean, low-fat yogurt, low-fat peanut butter, low-fat everything, right? Didn't make anybody healthier at all. In fact, quite the opposite. But at the time, this was just revolutionary to me. So I went to a bookstore that night, and I bought his book, Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution, whatever version that was back in 1999. And I read the book from cover to cover because I thought, before I reject this or do it, I want to know, I really want the facts. I want to know from the man himself what's all involved with this. And I'm really glad that I read the whole book because I found out that the diet was actually in 4 phases. There was the induction phase, which is getting you into ketosis, which is fat burning. And then there was ongoing weight loss. That was the second phase. Then there was pre-maintenance and then maintenance. And in that pre-maintenance, maintenance phase is when you could start adding back maybe like some berries if you like berries. You start adding back some things like lower glycemic fruit and things like that to try to gauge, and it's different for everybody because we're all, bio-individuality, how much you could have and still maintain your weight. And it was kind of hard back then for me too, because even though the internet was around, it was not the way it is now. We didn't have all these podcasts, right? We didn't have social media. So I was trying to do the maintenance part of it on my own, which I did pretty well. So anyway, I got on the diet, loved it. Once I got past, I think it was the first 4 or 5 days. Now people call it the keto flu these days. Back then, I just called it withdrawing from carbohydrates. And he did say in the book, and I'm very glad that Dr. Atkins mentioned that in the book, that yeah, you'll probably have a headache, you'll probably feel low energy, power through, don't give up, because once you get beyond this, once your body adjusts, you're going to feel great. And that's exactly what happened to me. Like on day 4 or 5, I felt amazing. I had all this energy. It was awesome, right? And I want to say another thing too about his book that was sort of like this revelation for me was that type 2 diabetes is reversible. Growing up, I had many people in my family, mostly on my mom's side, probably think all of them on my mom's side, that had diabetes, including my grandmother, a great aunt, my mom's sister, my aunt, several other people, right, in the family. And I was always told that diabetes runs in the family, right? So kind of like this genetic sentence that I may or may not get, right, depending on whose side I took after. And I even remember at the time, even being little, in my mind going, that's not for me. I'm not getting that. I don't want to inject myself with insulin. No way, right? And I didn't know insulin was a hormone back then either. That's another thing I learned from Dr. Atkins' book. But my mind was blown that he was reversing type 2 diabetes, which I didn't even think was possible because no one in my family knew that was possible. And I think back now and I wonder, if everybody had just changed what they were eating and cut down on the carbohydrates, like my grandmother, would she have lived longer? I don't know. We're never going to know the answer to that question, but I was thrilled to know that it was reversible. Now, I don't have type 2 diabetes. I never did get it, but I don't want it, right? I don't want to ever develop it. And so knowing that just by what you eat, you can prevent it from ever happening was just amazing. It was just this, like I said, a revelation to me. So that was another thing I learned. And he was also helping people with heart disease, right, through eating this way. So I decided I was going to follow the diet exactly, the way it was laid out in the book. I wasn't just going to do it in anticipation of taking some kind of medical test and then going back to eating however I was eating before. And I wasn't a big junk eater, but again, it was all that low fat. I was sort of so indoctrinated into that really the concept of eating real butter, real cheese, whole milk, real cream in my coffee, it was mind-blowing. But I ended up losing about 45 pounds. I felt great, kept it off for several years. And along the way, I had people, even my dad was not happy with me for, for staying on Atkins. And, people were saying things like, oh, you're starving your body and you're going to have a heart attack and all this kind of stuff. And even though my blood work was great, right? So anyway, I just did my thing. I enjoyed the benefits of it. I would tell people, I tried to get people in my family on it, especially those with type 2 diabetes. But I have learned that you can't want something for somebody more than they want it for themselves. And so all I can do, and even now, all I do is share the information. Even now, there are people I'm close to. I'm going to be pretty vague about it because I don't want to single out anyone. But there are people in my life that I really care about that I know would benefit from doing the things that I did. Getting a full thyroid panel, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But I really wish, and this is one reason why I'm doing this episode, is if you get nothing else from this episode, it's stop waiting for your conventional doctor who keeps telling you your labs are normal and you still feel like garbage and you still can't lose weight and you're still tired in the afternoon and your hair is thinning, like, get off of that treadmill. I know a nurse practitioner who calls it the hamster wheel of healthcare. I think that's a great way of putting it. Get off the hamster wheel of healthcare, invest in yourself, be willing to pay for somebody who can get you that root cause healing. And that's exactly what I did. Okay, so 1999, I discovered Dr. Atkins. So then 3 years later, and it worked great. 3 years later, I was still doing great, keeping the weight off. I discover bioidentical progesterone, not from a doctor, but from a businesswoman at a meeting I attended, a business meeting I attended. I used to belong to a group called the Association of Professional Women. It was a really nice networking group. We met once a month for dinner at this country club, have dinner, and there was always a speaker. So one night there was a speaker, and she was a businesswoman, and she was with a large company. It's still in existence today. It is an MLM, which I don't love. They did have great products at the time. I don't know what's going on with them now. I'm not going to name the name, but I am forever grateful to this woman for introducing me to natural progesterone cream, because I was still struggling at that time with the irregular periods. And she talked about this particular brand of progesterone cream. It was made from yams. It was bioidentical to what the human body produces and stops producing in many women. And she was going through all the benefits of it, and one of them was regulating your periods. And by then, I was just so frustrated that I was willing to try anything. And my philosophy has always been, if it can't hurt me and it might help, I'm going to try it. So just like with Dr. Atkins, right? But I wanted to be informed first. So that's why I got his book and I read it from cover to cover before I did anything. Let me back up though. Okay, so that was 2002 when I discovered natural progesterone cream. Before that, I think in the year 2000, I had a laparoscopic surgery for endometriosis. I forgot about that. That kind of fell in between here. So I'll back up a little bit more. So right before I discovered Dr. Atkins, I started developing cystic acne on my chin. I never had acne before in my life. And talk about going to doctors on your insurance plan, right? Back then I was still in that trap. But I did happen to find a really great dermatologist who was on my plan. This was right when I was starting at the bank. Went to the dermatologist. He was wonderful. I don't even remember this doctor's name. I couldn't remember it if I tried. But he took one look at me and he said, I'll give you something for the acne. I'll give you a prescription to get rid of that, an ointment. He's like, but you need to go see a gynecologist because that's a sign of PCOS. And I said, what is PCOS? And he said polycystic ovarian syndrome. Now, it's kind of misnamed because not everybody gets the cysts. I did have them. Later, I would have an ultrasound, but they were simple cysts that dissolved on their own. And anyway, that led me to having this laparoscopy in early 2000. And I was down in Miami at the IVF center and had it done. Everything was fine. And then, of course, as I leave, they hand me a prescription for synthetic birth control, which I promptly ripped up when I walked out, right? So even a specialist, right, the same thing. Still wasn't quite realizing that it was the system. Although when I read Dr. Atkins' book, it started to open my mind. I started to question things like, why is everybody villainizing this guy, right? He's reversing diabetes. He's reversing heart disease. His patients feel great. They love him. He's having all this wonderful success. Why isn't the AMA beating down his door? Why are his colleagues ridiculing him? This guy is saving lives. Well, now I know better, and now I understand the mantra, follow the money, find the truth. At the time, I was still a little bit naive. So now it all makes sense. And it's just a shame that even after this poor man slipped and hit his head on ice and died, that people were still lying about him and saying it was because he was eating meat, and meat had nothing to do with it. The man slipped on ice and hit his head. That's why he died. Anyway, I'm grateful to Dr. Atkins. I never knew him, but he's one of my heroes because he changed my life. Okay, so in 2002, right after I've had the laparoscopy, still dealing with the irregular periods, right, I've discovered natural progesterone cream made from yams. I think it was maybe like a couple of months, not that long, maybe, a couple of months, and things finally regulated. And I remember being grateful and also angry. I was grateful that I finally found a solution, but I was angry that none of these doctors that I had been to for more than a decade, well over a decade, even knew about it. It was insane to me, and this was an over-the-counter solution. I didn't even need a prescription for it, right? Because at the time it was a cream. It was like 2 pumps in the morning, 2 pumps at night. Very easy. And even now I am on Biest, which is estradiol, and testosterone in a cream form, and it's very, very easy. I love it. It's just at night, same thing, 2 pumps, rub it in, let it dry, rub it in, let it dry, and it's so easy. It's really easy. So that was my story. That was my milestone that I hit in 2002, the natural progesterone cream. So things were great for a while. And then I don't remember exactly when, but somewhere along the way, I gained weight, even though I was still maintaining, I was still following Atkins, and it just seemed like nothing I did would get the weight off. It didn't matter how I ate. It didn't matter if I was low carb. It didn't matter if I ate sugar. It didn't matter. I gained a certain amount of weight. Then I stopped gaining weight, but I couldn't get off the weight that I had put on. And I was still a cardio queen in those days. So I always loved aerobics. My sister and I used to go to Elaine Powers. I don't know if anybody remembers Elaine Powers back in the day, but we would go to all the classes. I was like in 7th grade, and we would go together. And then when I was in college and she was in law school, we both went to Villanova. There was an Elaine Powers right nearby, right near campus. I used to go all the time, and it was so great. I loved it. Never really made a difference in my body. I mean, I just enjoyed it, and I thought I was doing something good for myself. And along the way, my dad and my brothers tried to get me to lift weights, and I would do it every once in a while because my dad we had a basement in our house and with weights. They had benches and weights and everything, and it just never really interested me all that much. Although I did kind of off and on over the years. Places that I lived, like when I owned my condo in Boca, there was a gym and they did have some machines, and I would do that. But it was sporadic. I would say aerobics was the one thing that I did consistently, along with walking. I used to love to go walk like down A1A by the beach and with friends and things, and I still walk. But I've given up. I've stopped being a cardio queen, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But I had gained all this weight, could not get it off. Didn't matter what I did, no matter how much I exercised. It didn't matter what I ate. And let me just say here at this point, yes, I believe that food is medicine, but it's not the only medicine. All right. At this time, I was eating well, right? And low carb was not going to help me because what I didn't know was that I had Hashimoto's. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but low thyroid function. The thyroid is the master gland. It controls everything, including weight loss, digestion, heart rate, body temperature. So it didn't matter what I did as long as my T3 was in the tank, and T3 is the active form of the thyroid. We're gonna get there. So I just want to say that as much as, yes, we should eat whole food, real food, right? Whatever you're doing, make sure you're eating real food. 100% agree with that. And you may need other things. In my case, I needed other things. Food alone, maybe for some people that works. But in my case, having Hashimoto's, food alone was not going to solve my problem. And even today, food alone would not solve my problem. So I noticed all these symptoms. What else was I having? So the weight gain, then I noticed my hair was thinning. I would get these weird breakouts, not acne so much, but like just these weird, like almost like eczema, these breakouts on my chin. I would have sort of, I'll call low-level fatigue. It wasn't like crushing fatigue in the afternoon where I had to like actually lay down and take a nap, but it was annoying. It was enough to be annoying, to feel like I was kind of like pushing through my day, like having to just pull myself, right, through the day. It was that kind of a feeling, and I didn't like it. And I was sleeping. I think, I was sleeping pretty well. I didn't have constipation. Now, a lot of people with Hashimoto's get that. Thank God that wasn't one of my symptoms. But I had enough symptoms. I also developed gum disease along the way that nobody in my family had. So all these things came together. Now, I think the other problem with me was that these symptoms didn't happen all at once. It was sort of like this slow progression. I would get one, and then maybe some years would go by, and then another one would develop, and then some years would go by, and another one would develop. So I didn't get everything at once. And nothing was too extreme, so it was kind of insidious the way it all happened. But by 2018, I was like, I've got to do something different. So I found a functional medicine doctor. Now, at the time, I was copywriting and writing for, actually, she's still a good friend of mine. I'm not going to say her name, but she had a different digital marketing agency at the time. Now she has another agency, and we're back in touch with each other. But at the time, I was writing copy. I wrote a lead magnet for a doctor that she used to work for, and who was functional medicine, who had been in a different type of medicine, traditionally trained, and then for personal reasons went back to school and got whatever certifications you need to practice functional medicine. So went to see him, and I do have to say, on the positive side, he ran all the right tests. Now for thyroid, most endocrinologists and conventional doctors are going to run TSH and maybe free T4. You need much more than that. TSH is a pituitary gland measurement, right? It tells you how much the pituitary gland, like how much the brain is trying to like shake your thyroid and telling it to make more thyroid, which is actually, your thyroid is located here, little butterfly-shaped gland in your neck. So TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone, and free T4 is the amount of thyroid hormone your thyroid is producing. Now, T4 has 4 iodine atoms, that's why it's called T4. The body has to convert that to T3, meaning the body strips away one of those atoms, becomes T3. Every cell in our body has receptors for T3, so the T3 gets into the cells and does all the things that the body needs to do, like digestion, body temperature, heartbeat, hair growth, pretty much everything. The thyroid is the master, right? But when you don't have enough T3, and for most people, and certainly in my case, it's a conversion problem. So most people their thyroid is producing enough T4. The problem is their body is not converting enough of that T4 into T3. So they may have plenty of T4 in their body, but the cells can't do anything with that because it's inactive. So I found out that I had Hashimoto's thyroiditis, is the official name for it, because this doctor that I went to see in 2018 ran all the tests, including, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, and the thyroid antibodies. And that's a huge indicator. I think, my antibodies at one time were like in the 800s. When you have antibodies, the Hashimoto's antibodies are thyroglobulin and thyroid peroxidase. So there's 2 different antibodies. So what happens is they attack your thyroid gets beat up, and at the same time, you're not converting enough whatever T4 it's producing into T3. So hence some of the symptoms I had. Now, a lot of women they have trouble swallowing. They have, and I say women, I mean, it does happen to men too, but Hashimoto seems to affect way more women than men, although men can get it also. And so I didn't have all the symptoms, but there's like dry skin. I had hair thinning. My hair wasn't actually falling out in clumps, but it was thinning out. I had low-level fatigue. I think the gum disease is somehow indirectly related because it's an immune system problem, really. It's not a thyroid problem. The thyroid is the victim, but your immune system, your body, right, is producing these antibodies. And in this case, in Hashimoto's, these antibodies are attacking the thyroid. So that's what's going on. So it's really an autoimmune condition. And I know I heard a functional medicine doctor recently saying, don't call it an autoimmune condition, it's because of the environment and all. And I agree with that, but I think just for the purposes of making this understandable, that is what's happening. And yeah, I mean, between the toxic chemicals, I know there's a fight going on today in Washington, D.C. as I record this with Monsanto, and I don't want to get political on the show, and I'll just say that it makes me very angry that our government puts money and greed ahead of the well-being of its citizens. But these are things that we can't always control. I'm glad people are making their voices heard, but really it's money that talks. And so regardless of whether we win that fight or not, we as individuals have to do everything we can to offset the bad effects of that. Hashimoto's, a lot of reasons why people get it. Yes, could be environmental. It could just be a lot of reasons. So I don't know in my case exactly what was going on, but when you do have one autoimmune condition, it makes you susceptible to others, which is why when you're diagnosed with one, you really need to see the right person to get the help you need to overcome that and get optimized. So that doctor at least started me on the right path. So I was on, back in 2018, it was Armour Thyroid, bioidentical, made from pigs, which was great with me, right? Anything made from animals that's bioidentical to what a human body produces is way better than anything made in a lab. Although, I will say now, I'm also on liothyronine, which is made in a lab, but my body tolerates very well. And I'm also on NP thyroid, which is, NP thyroid is made from, I believe, from cows. And it's a combination, it's mostly T4 with some T3. So I'm on a combination of NP thyroid and liothyronine. And it's working out really well for me. So I saw that doctor in 2018, though, just to back up. Armour Thyroid, and I'm not going to say anything bad about it. I think that it was just probably a mistake on the compounding pharmacy's part because I take things as directed. I'm not the kind of person who thinks more is better. So, hey, if I'm prescribed this amount, I'm going to take double the amount. That's not me. I never do that. I always take things as prescribed. But it led to a thyroid storm, which led to an 8-day uninsured hospital stay, which led to that thyroid storm, led to a virus becoming active in my body and attacking my liver. It was a crazy, horrible time. Thank God my liver did not have permanent damage. But when I got through all of that, I still had Hashimoto's. And I realized, again, the limitations of conventional medicine, because after I was discharged from the hospital, I followed up with a primary care practice nearby. This was in South Florida. And let me tell you, I felt like, it was this huge, I walked in, it's this huge waiting room. Huge. Felt like a cattle call, right? So impersonal. Just so, I don't know what the word is. Just impersonal is probably the right word, right? It did not feel like a private practice. It just felt like in and out, bring them in and out, that kind of a thing. And so I will say, though, that they ran the full thyroid panel on me. And my antibodies at that time were in the 800s. Okay, they're supposed to be 0 or very low. I mean, you want them to be low enough that you're not having symptoms. 0 is ideal, right? This doctor looks at me and tells me that antibodies in the 800s was no cause for concern. We'll keep an eye on them, whatever that meant, right? So I knew, again, I had to find the right practitioner to help me. So eventually I found Dr. Amy Horniman, just to make a long story short. Along the way, I had gone to another practice. They got me, they kind of got me from where I was to closer to where I wanted to be. And then when I found Dr. Amy, I saw her interviewed by Dr. Weston Childs, like back in 2021, I want to say, like fall of 2021. I was like, oh my God, I have to follow her. I have to listen to her podcast, because not only was she intelligent and knowledgeable and obviously knew what she was doing, she had a pain to purpose story. She also was a Hashimoto's patient who went through the conventional system too and had her own frustrations until she found the functional medicine thyroid specialist who became her mentor. Not only helped her get optimized, but inspired her to change careers and to start her own practice and helping other thyroid patients. So that finally got me over the finish line. And now I maintain with, as I said, NP thyroid and liothyronine, which is T3 basically. So NP thyroid comes from cows, and it's a combination. I think it's mostly it's like 80% T4, maybe 20% T3. Then liothyronine is made in a lab, but it is pretty identical. It's pretty bioidentical. I tolerate it well. And I know that there are, some patients don't tolerate it as well, and there's things that you can do for that. And actually, probably about 2 years ago, I cut my dosage in half because I got enough function back that I don't need as much. So I'm still on it though, right? And I take that every day on an empty stomach. You keep your stomach empty for an hour, because what happens is if you don't have an empty stomach, T3 will bind to other things. So like, let's say you drink coffee and you take it, it's going to bind to that. Or if you eat, it's going to bind to the food that you're eating. Or if you take it with other supplements, it's going to bind with other supplements. So I got into a routine pretty easily. And I think once you start feeling great, you want to keep feeling great. Oh yes, and by the way, once I got optimized, the weight came off. I learned that I should no longer be a cardio queen. I have not been a cardio queen since like 2020. Lifting weights, I lift weights at the gym every other day. Every time I go, I add more weight, I add more reps and make it harder, as hard as I can. And in between, I do Pilates and yoga, and I walk my dog several times a day. I get exercise that way, get out in the sun, right? That was another thing too, avoid the sun, put all the sunscreen on that's got chemicals in it, because that's going to protect you from skin cancer. And now they're finding that the sunscreen is causing skin cancer. Now, obviously you have to be careful depending on where you fall on that Fitzpatrick scale, but really 30 minutes of daylight a day is great for everybody. So I do that, and it's easy when you have a dog. Go adopt a dog from the shelter, please. The shelters, they're overrun with these poor sweet dogs that need homes. So go adopt a dog from the shelter. It'll get you outside walking several times a day. So that's what I do. I feel great, and that's how I am maintaining. And I am far from perfect as far as food. Are there times, like a special occasion, where I eat cookies or whatever? I mean, I pretty much stay gluten-free. But yeah, are there times when I eat the gluten-free chocolate chips? Yeah, But for the most part, I know what to do. I stay on that track. I'm in this great routine. I love the gym that I go to. Actually, I think I could say the name of the gym. I go to Planet Fitness, and I don't know why, but about a month or so ago, there was like all this noise on social media, like ridiculing people that go to Planet Fitness and Planet Fitness. I love that place. I am not a snob, and I just want to say this too. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I was listening to one, and there were two women, very accomplished, right, in their field. I don't want to give away too much about them, because I don't really want to use their names, because they're not the only ones who do this. But basically, one was a very well-known fitness trainer. One's very well-known in her field, in the functional medicine, I'll just say that, profession. And they were just talking about how, if you use machines at a gym, you might as well not even go. And I'm like, way to turn off people who want to use the machines at a gym. I mean, I use the machines at the gym. And I do free weights too, but I feel like people have to start somewhere. And the other thing they said was, you need to get a personal trainer. Well, maybe some people can't afford to get a personal trainer right off the bat. I would rather see somebody go regularly, have a tour, learn how to use the equipment, go regularly, add weights, add reps every time you go, and get yourself to a point. And then maybe, yes, you can get to a point where you can hire a personal trainer and you can do it. But I feel like if you're a self-motivated person like I am, you'll motivate yourself. You'll push yourself. Every time I go, I push myself. I keep track of what I did right the last time. So I know, and I write it down, and then I go and I try to push beyond that every time. And I do that every time I go. And I'm seeing results. I mean, I can see the muscles. I can see them building in my arms, in my legs. I feel stronger. I am stronger. I can lift heavier things. And so it is working. And yes, I mean, it's great. If you can afford a personal trainer, 100% absolutely. And if you want to use the machines, do it. 100% absolutely. Get started. And don't listen to people who say that you have to do this or that. It has to be a certain way. Just get started. Just start lifting weights, right? I started with dumbbells at home. I went up to 12 pounds at home, and then I thought, I got to get beyond this, but I like my garage for my car. I'm not going to set up a gym at home. I'm going to start going to the gym. And I love Planet Fitness, and they have locations everywhere. It's very convenient. I also like the culture there. I see people of all fitness levels, all ages. No one's allowed to use their cameras, when people are working out. So there's no fear that somebody's going to capture you, working out in the background, and you're going to end up in somebody's TikTok video. They don't do any of that. And it also has these wonderful hydro massage tables, a red light therapy booth, massage chairs. It's just fabulous. I'm so glad that I joined, and it's just about a year now that I've been going there. So that is my story. So you can purchase my book, My Escape from the Sick Care System, A Guide to Overcoming PCOS, Hashimoto's, and Autoimmune Conditions with Functional Medicine. It is on Amazon. It's 99 cents in Kindle. It's $14.97 in paperback. I have a free guide that you can download to finding the right functional medicine practitioner for you. I've got a guide to labs in the back and what they do. I've got a symptoms guide, what your body might be trying to tell you. I've got a list of some of my most recommended podcasts. My personal story, yes, but practical information and practical exercises you can do at the end of every chapter. So, and I also want to mention, gosh, I can't believe I forgot to mention this, but Ben Azadi, New York Times bestselling author of Metabolic Freedom, was kind enough to read my book and give me an editorial review. Ben is wonderful. I've been following him since the days when his podcast was called Keto Camp. I discovered him through Amy. Been following him ever since, listening to his podcast. He's wonderful and just such an amazing person. I mean, what a good heart he has. He really is so genuine in what he's doing to help people. He just really cares about getting people healthy. So this is what he had to say about my book. My Escape from the Sick Care System is a powerful blend of memoir and medicine. Daria Anne pulls back the curtain on the failures of conventional healthcare while offering a hopeful, practical path forward through functional medicine. Raw, relatable, and deeply empowering, this book gives women struggling with PCOS, thyroid disorders, and autoimmune conditions the tools and courage to become their own best advocates. A must-read for anyone ready to move from frustration to freedom. Thank you so much, Ben. And thank you all for listening to this episode of True Voice Unfiltered. I hope you enjoyed it. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. You can find me at truevoicewritingservices.com. Click on the contact button. You can schedule a free 30-minute discovery call with me. Even if you don't want to write a book, if it's not about content and you just want to talk a little bit more about my experience, I can guide you, point you in the right direction, give you some resources to really take control of your health. Because whatever autoimmune condition you're struggling with, conventional medicine is not going to have the answer. Conventional medicine is great. Break your arm, break your leg, you have a ruptured appendix. Obviously, we need conventional medicine, right? 100%. But when it comes to chronic conditions, they're not going to go into lifestyle. They're not going to talk to you about the stress in your life, what else is going on, simply because in the insurance dictated system, they got 7 minutes and it's in and out, in and out, in and out. So if you really want to get well and stay well, you've got to change your lifestyle. You've got to find the right person. You've got to get on. If you need prescriptions, I'm not against prescriptions. NP thyroid is a prescription. Liothyronine is a prescription, but they are replacing what my body is missing. That's the difference. I also take low-dose naltrexone. Now, a lot of people know about naltrexone because they know it as a medication that they give people with addictions. Well, in low doses, right, low-dose naltrexone, it also helps balance the immune system. So I take that, and I didn't get into all the supplements today, but I take a lot of supplements, including black cumin seed oil, which also helps the immune system. And so I'm on this routine, and it's been working really well. But the message I want you to take away is that you have the power to get well when you work with the right person and when you maintain the right regimen and lift weights and get sunshine and take the right supplements, good quality supplements. Maybe I'll talk about that in a future episode. But work with the right person and just be willing to invest in yourself. Get off the healthcare hamster wheel, or the hamster wheel of healthcare, as my friend, the nurse practitioner, calls it. Get off of that because it's going nowhere and you're just going to remain frustrated. And that is why I wrote my book. I was willing to put my personal story out there for everyone to read because I felt so strongly that people need to know this information. I'm just tired of seeing people struggle, whether it's lupus, Hashimoto's, vitiligo, whatever it is, all these autoimmune conditions, and there's so many of them out there, celiac, right? Get the help you need. There is an answer. These problems are solvable, and you can come out on the other side feeling fantastic. So thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Reach out to me at truevoicewritingservices.com/contact. Get my book, My Escape from the Sick Care System, on Amazon and Kindle and paperback. And I'll see you here soon for another episode of True Voice Unfiltered. Be well.